So this is a conversation with Loukas Stamellos. He is a member of Omnia TV, which is a media initiative based in Greece. And he's also a member of Golden Dawn Watch, an initiative that was following the trial of the Golden Dawn Nazi Party. The courts recently convicted Golden Dawn of being a criminal organization, effectively rendering it illegal. So obviously we spoke about that trial, we spoke about Golden Dawn, but we also spoke about fascism in Greece and Europe more broadly. We tried to understand the roots of this movement, of this phenomenon, and why a certain percentage of the population always seems to go and support it. This is a conversation about EU policy of xenophobia against migrants. This is a conversation about state nationalism supported by governments like Greece. And this is a conversation about the economic crisis that also fueled the rise of Golden Dawn. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I found Loukas to be a very thoughtful guest, and I think that you will benefit from his insights. So that's it from me. If you like what I do, please consider supporting this project with only $1 a month on Patreon on buymeacoffee.com, and you can also do so directly on PayPal if you prefer. Patreon's for monthly, PayPal's for one-offs, and Buy Me a Coffee has both options. And if you cannot donate, you can still help by reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you.
My name is Loukas Stamellos. I am a member of Omnia TV, which is a grassroots media initiative in Greece. We are operating since September 2011 until today, and since the beginning of the Golden Dawn trial, we have been covering the proceedings every week, every day, since the day started until now. The monitoring of the trial was something different. It was not on a news basis or a journalistic coverage, but it was done by a separate organization, Golden Dawn Watch. What we did was, as a group, with E50, the nickname of one of our members, who was the host and producer of the show every week, and other members of Omnia TV. What we did was every week cover the proceedings and give the major points that happened in the days of the trial of the past week.
Okay, so let's start this conversation, if it's okay, by you giving us some context into the trial. Why does it matter, and why is it something that in Greek politics especially has been followed quite a lot in recent times?
Well, it's easy for me to explain why this trial mattered, because we also had to explain it in Greece. And we had to explain it in Greece because there was a uniform stance from the media, from the mainstream media, that was silent about it. So what we did, apart from covering what was happening in the proceedings, was also over and over again mentioning why this trial was important. And this trial was important because it's the first time in Greece, and as far as we know in Europe, after World War II, that a Nazi party, not a neo-Nazi organization, not just a group of neo-Nazis, a party that is founded on the same ideology and with the same organization principles as the Nazi party in Germany, was being tried for crimes committed in Greece against the three main targets of the Nazi ideology, which is communists, anti-fascists, and immigrants.
So I'll ask you kind of more broadly, what is Golden Dawn? And if that's okay, one thing that someone who doesn't know much about Greece, for example, may know is that Greece suffered quite a lot under the Nazi occupation. Like, the question would be asked, how could the Greek Nazi party even exist in the first place, let alone get the third largest votes in parliament and all of that?
Well, how could the Nazi party actually exist in Greece after what happened in the occupation by the Nazis in the Second World War? Well, that's a good question, because I could ask the same question I have seen how neo-Nazi organizations exist actually in Israel. Some neo-Nazi organizations exist there. So it's not surprise for it's no surprise for us that not a neo-Nazi organization, but a Nazi party existed in Greece. If you take into account that there were Greeks that cooperated with the Nazi occupation back then. So it's more or less expected that there would be, and there were continuously until today, the offsprings of that particular part of the society, of the Greek society.
Of the collaborators, basically, with the Nazis.
The successors of the collaborators with the Nazis.
Greece in recent years has undergone quite a lot of crisis, I think it's fair to say. The big one, or at least one of the big ones in recent years, was the one that followed the financial crash of 2008, and which is often credited with at least boosting Golden Dawn's base, let's say, or at least popularity within the base. Some, from what I've seen, of course, in the research, some said that they voted for them as a kind of a protest vote. Others voted for them, of course, out of conviction, or, some people in between. The motivations would vary. But there was a background to how this happened. It didn't really happen in a vacuum. Can you sort of just contextualize it for those who don't know?
Well, there is two parts in this, and we have to touch on Golden Dawn's history, because the crisis was the financial crisis from 2010 onwards, which is more or less continuing until today in Greece, and a further downfall is expected in the next few months. But apart from that crisis, there was a past. There was a dark and uneasy past that was actually surfaced during this trial. And this is another reason why this trial was important. Golden Dawn did not begin its operations in 2012 or 2010 or close or during this crisis. Nikolaos Michaloliakos, who was the leader eternal of this Nazi organization, founded this party in 1992. The problem was that, back then, Golden Dawn did not have any legitimate representation in the political system, but it seems that it built on some very sketchy relations between the political establishment and the groups in the far right in general. One of them was Golden Dawn, and they seemed to have a certain connection with some in the political system. And that was proven in this trial. We had police officers. A police officer was also convicted as a member of this criminal organization. And we have phone calls that show that police officers were relaying information regarding their operations to high-ranking members of the Golden Dawn. Apart from that, we also had evidence that Golden Dawn was in direct communication with the government of Samaras, of New Democracy, before the killing of Pavlos Fyssas. They had cooperation so as Golden Dawn was to support with its vote some initiatives of the government in the parliament. This, of course, does not happen overnight. It means, and it just proves that there was a continuous direct line of communication from the past. So we know that the first part was that there was a part of the establishment and the authorities were actually complicit with letting Golden Dawn build its base during all these years, since 1992 until 2009, actually, when Michaloliakos got into the Athens Municipal Council. That was the turning point in the presence of Golden Dawn in the mainstream politics.
And that was in which year?
In 2009.
Okay, so we're talking about over a decade now of mainstreaming of this party before even it reaches the...
almost 1.5 decades or almost 2. The main issue over which Michaloliakos built a voters base for him in Athens mainly, was the events in Agios Panteleimonas neighborhood. Some people may have heard of this. It is a neighborhood in downtown Athens. Of course, it's a mid-low income neighborhood, which, as most mid-low income neighborhoods, has had many new immigrants settling in that area. Michalogliakos launched a violent campaign against non-Greeks in that area. Even with the support of some members of Michalogliakos launched a campaign against non-Greeks in Agios Panteleimonas, and in this case he had the direct support not only of the other far-right party that was previously occupying these seats in the parliament, which was Laos, Karadziaferi's party, that was an offspring of New Democracy, today's ruling party, the right-wing party. And he also had support from high-profile far-right members, such as Adonis Georgiadis, who was then a member of the Laos party, and later became a member of New Democracy, and today is a minister in the so-called center-right government. What I'm saying with this is that Golden Dawn did not act alone there. They had the support of almost every part of a right wing. It didn't matter if it was far right or center right. And in this context, also the media found a very appealing or compelling case to sell on a widespread xenophobia, which they themselves had cultivated. The media found this as a proof that there is a real problem in Greece with immigrants, which was not true. The problem was created by neo-Nazis, Nazis, far-right, and the very activistic elements of the right wing. So they create tension in the area, and they say, oh, look what the immigrants did to that area. This was an ingenious, I don't know if it was a plot or it was something that just happened with all the pieces, falling in and completing a puzzle that had to be created. Of course, the state, what we in Greece usually refer as deep state, elements of the state that are not actually controlled by elected authorities, and they have their own agenda, which is the same no matter what government or how many years have passed, which is national security. Let's call it that. Under that pretext, they were also enabling Golden Dawn to carry out the realization of their Nazi program. These elements are not only in the police, which is more or less expected, even in the most liberal Western democracies. There seems to be something in the police institutions that works better with far-right, fascists, Nazis, all these elements. But it was also in the judiciary system. And this is what connects us with Golden Dawn's trial today. There were cases over and over again made in the courts. Of course, if you have a group that its program is violence, its political program is violence. Don't forget, we are talking about National Socialists. They are nothing different. They are the same as the NSDAP party in Germany. So their political program was to push against the elements of the population that they deemed less worthy lives in their minds, in their program. So the political message itself was violence. And when cases of Nazi violence implicating members of the Golden Dawn were in the courts, some of them led to acquittals, and some of them were just buried in the bureaucracy of the judiciary system. The second part of the rise of the Golden Dawn was after Agios Panteleimonas, after 2009 and 10, during the economic crisis. In that time, there was an element that Golden Dawn actually capitalized on that. There was the delegitimization of the political system. When you have the political system delegitimized, then you either have to propose something, there is a proposal for something better, or the worst take over. So we had the worst not take over, but dominate mainstream politics. I have to say that this was because the left was very hesitant. So the left wing in Greek politics, I won't speak. I won't even speak about the center. It was the center, the so-called center, that caused the whole delegitimization. And there is actually an international term now for that, pacification, if I'm not mistaken in French, because PASOK was what represented the center or center left, let's say, in Greek politics, and it was the party that actually proved to many people that elections had no impact whatsoever, that policies were not discussed and implemented democratically, but they had to be, there is a TINA, there is no alternative. There is one policy that everyone must follow. So it doesn't matter if you are right or left or center, there is only that. This was the cause of the legitimization of the political system. That was what enabled the left, or part of the left, Syriza, to grow and take over that center-left part in society that was left without representation. But this part was very hesitant to, let's say, break eggs. In the political sense, I don't mean raising the level of tensions. I mean that they were very hesitant in adopting actual left-wing policies. They tried not to break eggs. They tried to be polite. They tried to be accepted as proper politicians that were to be trusted to do the same job that every other politician was doing in Greece in the past. This was what enabled Golden Dawn to say that we are the voice against the establishment, although, as I explained before, they relied on the establishment to build their base and follow their Nazi agenda. And this was something that with the media, maybe it sold well to the audiences. So it was something teasing, and most media played on it in a sense like, okay, these are not very bad guys. Look, one of them, Kassidiaris, is good looking and he is also interested in tango. He lives alone, he's a bachelor, he dates nice girls. That was how media approached the rise of Golden Dawn into the parliament. And this gave them actually 3 terms until 2019.
And I think, based on that, Mikhail Olyakos, in the English, I think in the English translation is something that he said, we may do the Nazi salute, but at least our hands are clean.
Exactly. Yes, he said that we may be saluting like that, showing the Nazi salute, but our hands, these hands are clean. We are not thieves, meaning that we have not taken anything from the public, from the state coffers or something. We have not spent public money, which is somewhat true, as we'll find out later.
So the hands are clean, obviously, it's a reference to the corruption of the state, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we know this. But can we speak about the people that they did kill? So you mentioned Fisas. I do know of him. I actually had known some of his music beforehand. But from what I understand, it wasn't just him. They killed a number of migrants. Can we talk a bit about those?
During all the decades since 1992 that Golden Dawn existed and its action took place, we don't know how many of the victims of racist crimes we can actually ascribe to them or to other people or to other groups. What we know from the verdict of this trial now is that this organization killed a Pakistani worker, Shahzad Luqman, in January 2013, just a few months before the killing of Pavlos Fisas, an anti-fascist rapper who was identified by members of the Golden Dawn in Piraeus, and who mobilized the local Storm Battalion and killed him. So these two victims is what we know in this trial, what has been documented, that we can now openly say, not that parts of the anti-fascist movements were not saying it already with good cause, but now it's a matter of public record that these two victims, these two murders were committed by Golden Dawn as an organization, not just by members in unrelated incidents. They were the result of the existence of Golden Dawn. We also have, of course, attempted murder against 4 Egyptian fishermen, also close to Piraeus in Perama, which was similar to the other, an attack similar to the others of Golden Dawn, a group, a storm battalion, as it is called in the case file, attacked their home, and they almost killed one of them who was sleeping in the terrace. The others were inside the house, and they managed to keep them off, to fend them off. So there was no other another direct victim of this murder attempt. And there were also the members of PAME, the Union of the Communist Party of Greece, who were attacked while they were in the streets of Perama also. The members of the Union of the Communist Party, PAME, were also attacked when they are putting up posters for their upcoming festival, also by members of 2 storm battalions of Golden Dawn. And the time was so quick, it was so little, there was so little time, they also fended them off. They were more organized, so there was not a victim. There were only minor damages to person.
It's actually incredible that I don't think I knew this, but you're calling them Storm Battalion, which is obviously a reference to the original by the Nazis.
Yes, it is. The terminology Storm Battalions is actually in the case file. It's put there by the prosecutor.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, like some different, because obviously Golden Dawn has been ascribed as like one form of far-right populism and whatever. And of course, the electorate will have similarities with the types of Front National in France or whatever. There will be similarities with the electorate or, the Salvini gang in Italy. But the party itself is like one thing that Front National has tried to do in France is to say, well, we're not like those fascists and the collaborators. We're not like them, even though they still would then, But whereas with Golden Dawn, it's actually much more open. It's just directly, the Nazi salute, as we said, the leader is the eternal leader, really functioning like a cult. And I guess what is, I don't know if the word is surprising, but definitely worrisome, is how something this open can have a broader base than its quote unquote core base. And this is a lesson, I think, to anyone who's like on the anti-fascist side of things, which I think is all listeners, but yeah.
There is an old slogan of the anti-fascist movement in Greece. You go to sleep as a patriot, you wake up a fascist. This is something that actually it's a condensation of the explanation. There are elements in patriotism as it is used by the institutions and the media that can be easily used by any fascist organization of any type, even a Nazi party. And this is exactly what happened in Greece. We have a long-standing tradition of state-sponsored nationalism, and Golden Dawn, they used exactly that to promote their position in the political system.
Yes, indeed. And thank you for saying this. This is something that I really try and emphasize a lot when I speak about, or when I try to talk about some of these phenomena, that this is not an overnight situation. This is not people woke up one day and decided that everyone was fascist. It is something that is built up. It is something that they use. And to this day, By the time this episode will be released, I will have released the episode on the Moria fires. Can you talk a bit, like from your perspective as well, connecting those with the trial, the significance, I guess, because as we said, one of the main victims of Golden Dawn were these immigrants and these refugees. At the end of the day, okay, Golden Dawn gets criminalized, and sure, that's good. The movement itself will take on other forms, but even some of its ideas, the obsessive hatred of migrants and refugees, that isn't going away.
They are not only not going away, they are becoming part of mainstream European politics. And that was the biggest damage that was made by Golden Dawn being a part of... it's a feedback circle. There was institutional nationalism that enabled anti-immigration policies all over the European Union and also in Greece. Golden Dawn fed on that. They promoted more anti-immigration and anti-human, actually, policies. And some of these policies are now the discussion, some of the content of these policies and the ideology that was promoted by Golden Dawn are now part of the mainstream discussion against refugees, against immigrants, against Roma in Greece. We have a situation in the past few days with the killing of an 18-year-old Rom person. The killing has sparked some unrest among the Roma population in Greece. And we see now the same arguments that were used by Golden Dawn, used in the mainstream political spectrum from New Democracy members, etc., etc.
Yes, indeed. I mean, this is also very important, of course. There's quite a lot of research, I think, has been done on this. Like, you might have in Norway, you may not have Anders Breivik necessarily running for government, but some of his ideas would then become mainstream. You have in the UK, Nigel Farage not winning that many seats, but the Tory party is basically a representation of it right now.
Exactly the same. As Nigel Farage was the inspiration for what the government is actually doing right during this time. It's exactly the same thing that happened to Greece in a feedback loop from the Nazis to the mainstream right wing.
Yeah, for sure. And also same with Salvini, Italy, and etc. So
we have to understand that we have to understand that this is a global situation. I mean, the same is happening. It's something that is similarly happening in almost every Western democracy in the world at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that note, I'll ask you sort of a closing off question. I'll end my bit on that. Can you sort of speak more generally of like what is next for both what to expect essentially of the fascist movement, let's call it, in Greece or Europe more broadly, and what are anti-fascists expecting, or what are some things that they're trying to focus on, and so on?
Well, first I have to, for this part, I have to say that of course I do not represent the anti-fascist movement in Greece. Of course, there are many different opinions and positions in the anti-fascist movement. People and groups analyze situations under a different angle. But I have to say that for the greatest part of the anti-fascist movement, the importance of this trial is that at least we have a tool to use for the foreseeable future. For the phases that are to come, we have now a tool that actually, when you have a court decision that is saying that what the anti-fascists were saying is actually true, this is a tool that can be used against fascist organizations or fascist positions in the mainstream politics. This is one of the important aspects of this outcome. I expect that fascist organizations will now adopt a very different profile. They won't be gone forever. They will lose some support in the society. We do know that there is a part of the Greek society, about 20%, that will support these ideas. When we speak of society, we have to always have in mind that we are not talking about something that is uniform, that is one body. There are many different bodies, groups that form what we call society, and they have very different understanding of things. And in the end, the battle against authoritarian fascism will be won or lost in the society itself. So the fascist organizations or groups or politicians will now try to use different wordings for their positions. That means that we might be seeing as a reorganization of this part of the spectrum into something very similar to the American alt-right. We already see some of the elements forming inside that spectrum, and their obsession with things like traditional family, nativism, and religion. They will stop using things, they will stop using symbols and actual phrases that connect them to the fascist movements in the history, but they will try to modernize the same fascist message. They will try to use new wording, new presentation, and the miracles of branding in the modern times. For conveying actually the same message, they will stop speaking against openly. They will start saying that we are not against anyone, we are actually advocating some principles. And this is a very dangerous thing, because then we have to show that they are not advocating for some, they are actually calling for attacks against the others.
Yeah, which is what the Front National does fairly effectively in France, for that matter. Well, you want to say something?
I would like to add that this was a victory. This was a victory because some people said that this is it. We either win this or lose it. And it's important to win this, because if we lose this, there is no telling to how powerful the fascist movement can become in Greece. Even if the right wing, Samaras, who is taking credit for starting the prosecution against Golden Dawn, which is not true. There needs to be some fact-checking on this. He was actually holding back the prosecution, and he just released it with the murder of Pavlos Fissas. These are two very different things. But even in that context, there were some people that say that we have to win this. And there was a very strong movement that supported these people. And these people gave everything. I mean, the lawyers, the families of the victims themselves, the survivors, gave a huge battle, which is now 7 years old, to bring this into conclusion. And we have to say that the outcome of this trial is not typical of the Greek judiciary system. And the judges that brought out this verdict are exceptions that honored their position. We have to say that. We have to give credit where it's due. We are not used to that. That's why we have to say that it's good that some judges actually did their work.
Yes, indeed. That's a very good point. Thank you. So, like on that note, I really want to, I want to thank you for your time. This has been really informative. Keep on doing what you're doing, and yeah, good luck on the rest.
Thank you. You too.